For decades, Clint Eastwood built a reputation as the calm, disciplined Hollywood legend who always seemed in control. However, while married to his first wife for 3 decades, Clint Eastwood was quietly living a second life that almost no one fully understood. Behind the fame, the Western hero image, and the carefully guarded privacy were overlapping affairs, hidden relationships, and children the public would not learn about until years later. Some women believed they were building a future with him, while others did not even know they were part of a much bigger secret. And somehow Eastwood managed to keep the truth buried, even from the women he shared his life with. Now we finally know how he was able to hide it all. Clint Eastwood's first secret child. Clint Eastwood has always been a man who does things his own way, and that includes his relationships with women. From his high school years onward, he developed a pattern of intense but brief affairs that would follow him throughout his life. He was charming, handsome, and famously private, a combination that made it easy for him to move from one woman to the next without the public ever knowing the full story. In May of 1953, Eastwood met Margaret Neville Johnson, known to everyone as Maggie, on a blind date. She was working as a manufacturing secretary at the time, a steady job that paid the bills while she figured out what she wanted to do with her life. Eastwood was a young man with big dreams and very little money, but he had something that could not be taught. He had presence. Maggie was drawn to him immediately, and he was drawn to her in return. Their courtship moved quickly, the way young love often does when neither person wants to wait. After only 6 months of dating, they married on December 19, 1953, in Paso Robles, California. The trouble started almost immediately. Eastwood was restless and uncomfortable with the routine of married life, and he frequently disappeared for days at a time without offering much explanation. Maggie tolerated this behavior at first, hoping that he would settle down once his career took off. But the absences did not stop, and the couple quickly adapted to an unspoken arrangement. They lived largely separate lives, sharing a house, but not much else. Maggie learned not to ask too many questions, and Eastwood learned not to offer too many answers. The marriage continued on paper, but the emotional connection that had brought them together had already started to fray. Here is the part of the story that stayed hidden for decades. While Eastwood was engaged to Maggie in 1953, before they ever walked down the aisle, he had a passionate, short-term affair with a woman in Seattle. She was a member of a local theater group that Eastwood participated in during a brief stay in the city. The affair did not last long, but it was intense enough that the woman became pregnant. She gave birth to a daughter in 1954, and without ever notifying Eastwood that he was the father, she placed the child up for adoption immediately. Eastwood went on with his life, married Maggie, and started building his career. He had no idea that he had a daughter living somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. The baby was adopted by a couple named Clyde and Helen Warren of Seattle. They named her Lori Warren, and she grew up in a stable home with no knowledge of her biological parents. For decades, that was where the story stopped. Lori lived her life. Eastwood became a movie star, and the secret remained buried. When Lori turned 34 years old, she decided to find her biological roots. She hired a private investigator to dig into her adoption records and uncover the identity of her birth parents. The investigator did his job well, and the official adoption paperwork that he uncovered explicitly listed Clint Eastwood as the biological father. Lori stared at the name on the page and tried to process what she was reading. Clint Eastwood, the movie star? The man who played Dirty Harry and directed Unforgiven? That man was her father. Lori first attempted to contact her biological mother, hoping to get more information before reaching out to Eastwood. The mother rejected the connection entirely, making it clear that she had no interest in revisiting the past or meeting the daughter she had given away decades earlier. Heartbroken but not defeated, Lori turned her attention to Eastwood. She reached out to him directly, not knowing what kind of reception she would receive. Eastwood was deeply shocked by the news. He had no idea that the brief affair in Seattle had produced a child. He had no idea that he had been a father for more than 3 decades without ever knowing it. But after the initial shock wore off, his response surprised everyone who knew about the situation. He did not deny the relationship or hire lawyers to make the problem go away. He immediately welcomed Lori into the family. He treated her like a daughter from the moment they met, and he made up for lost time by including her in major public events. He took her to the Academy Awards in 2004, sitting with her among the most famous people in the world, as if she had been by his side his whole life. The secret was out, but Eastwood did not seem to mind. He He had fathered a child outside of his marriage, a child who had been adopted and raised by strangers, and he was not going to hide from that truth. But Lori was not the only secret child in Eastwood's past. The Rawhide era would bring another surprise, one that the tabloids would have a field day with when the truth finally came out: the Rawhide affair. In 1959, during the production of the second season of CBS's hit Western series Rawhide, Eastwood met a dancer and stuntwoman named Roxanne Tunis. She worked on the set, performing the kind of physical work that most actresses would not do, and she caught Eastwood's attention immediately. At that exact time, Eastwood was still legally married to Maggie Johnson, though their marriage had already settled into the separate lives arrangement that both of them had grown accustomed to. Tunis was also legally married, but she was entirely separated from her spouse and living independently. Neither marriage was working, and both people were looking for something that their legal partners could not provide. What started as a casual connection turned into something much longer. Eastwood and Tunis embarked on an intense, highly secretive affair that spanned from 1959 all the way until 1973. That is 14 years of hiding in plain sight on Hollywood sets, in hotel rooms, and behind the closed doors of houses that the press did not know about. The affair was an open secret among the people who worked on Rawhide and the other productions that Eastwood was involved with, but the public never caught wind of it. Eastwood was careful, Tunis was discreet, and together they kept their relationship out of the tabloids for more than a decade. On June 17, 1964, Tunis gave birth to a daughter. She named the baby Kimber Lynn, though the birth certificate initially listed her as Kimber Tunis. Unlike the situation with Lori, where Eastwood had not even known he was the father, this time his legal name was officially registered directly on Kimber's birth certificate at the time of her delivery. He knew about the pregnancy. He was present for the birth, at least in the sense that he made sure the paperwork was correct. Kimber was his daughter, and he was not going to pretend otherwise on a legal document. Everyone on the Rawhide set knew about the baby. The cast and crew were not blind, and secrets do not stay secret when people work together 12 hours a day. But they kept quiet because that was how Hollywood worked in those days. Reporters did not dig as deep as they do now. Studios had public relations departments that could kill stories before they printed. And Eastwood had a carefully cultivated image that the studio was invested in protecting. The affair and the child stayed hidden from the press for years. Maggie Johnson, Eastwood's wife, allegedly learned about Kimber's existence during a surprise visit to the set of one of Eastwood's films in 1972. The shock of discovering that her husband had fathered a child with another woman, and that the child was already 8 years old, was devastating. But Maggie did not leave immediately. She stayed, and the marriage limped along for several more years, though the trust between them was gone forever. The secret was completely hidden from the global public for 25 years. That is an astonishing length of time to keep something like this quiet. A Hollywood star, one of the biggest in the world, had fathered a child outside his marriage, and nobody outside the industry knew about it. It was not until July of 1989 that the National Enquirer finally broke the story, splashing Kimber's existence across newsstands in a headline that shocked millions of readers. Eastwood did not deny the story or sue the paper. He simply confirmed that Kimber was his daughter and moved on with his life. While the affair with Tunis was winding down in the late 1960s, Eastwood made a desperate bid to save his original marriage. He and Maggie reunited, at least physically, and they tried to rebuild what had been broken. This temporary domestic truce resulted in the births of his first two publicly acknowledged children. His son, Kyle Eastwood, was born in 1968. His daughter, Allison Eastwood, followed in 1972. For a few years, the family looked normal from the outside, but the marital band-aid did not hold. The wounds were too deep, and the trust was too damaged. The reunion that had produced Kyle and Allison could not erase the years of betrayal and separate lives. Eastwood and Maggie reached a permanent hostile physical separation in 1975, more than 20 years after they had first married. They lived apart, spoke only when necessary, and waited for the right time to make the split official. Maggie Johnson officially filed for divorce, and the legal proceedings dragged through the courts for years. The reason the divorce took so long was money. Eastwood had become enormously wealthy during his marriage, and Maggie was entitled to a significant portion of that wealth. The final divorce was not finalized until November of 1984. more than 30 years after their wedding. Maggie walked away with a massive multi-million-dollar settlement, one of the largest in Hollywood history at that time. She had earned it. She had stayed married to Clint Eastwood for 3 decades, tolerated his affairs, raised his children, and kept his secrets. The money did not make up for the pain, but it allowed her to live comfortably for the rest of her life. The Rawhide affair was over, and the marriage to Maggie was over. But Eastwood was not finished having children outside of marriage, the Sondra Locke era. In 1975, while filming The Outlaw Josie Wales, Eastwood began a long-term and highly publicized relationship with actress Sondra Locke. She was young, talented, and ambitious, and she fit perfectly into the mold of the kind of woman Eastwood was drawn to. By the end of that same year, Locke had moved into Eastwood's Bel Air estate, and the two of them established a domestic partnership that lasted uninterrupted for 13 years. To the outside world, they seemed like a real couple, the kind of Hollywood pairing that made sense to fans and industry insiders alike. But behind the gates of the Bel Air estate, the relationship was more complicated than anyone knew. Locke later revealed in court documents that Eastwood had very strong opinions about parenthood. He adamantly insisted that having children did not fit their Hollywood lifestyle, that kids would slow them down and get in the way of the careers they were both building. Locke, who wanted children of her own, eventually gave in to his pressure. She underwent 2 traumatic reproductive health procedures and later a tubal ligation procedure to ensure that she would never become pregnant. The surgeries were painful, and the emotional toll was worse. She gave up the chance to have children for a man who would eventually leave her. While living with Locke, Eastwood frequently spent time at a restaurant he co-owned in Carmel by the Sea, California. The place was called the Hog's Breath Inn, and it was a popular spot for locals and tourists alike. Eastwood liked to hang out there and talk to people who were not in the movie business. It was at or near that restaurant that Eastwood met a young flight attendant named Jocelyn Reeves. She was born in Seattle, and she had the kind of natural beauty that Eastwood had always been drawn to. The meeting seemed casual at first, just 2 people crossing paths in a small coastal town. But it was not casual at all. Eastwood launched an unpublicized affair with Reeves that directly overlapped the final 3 years of his cohabitation with Locke. While he was still living with Sondra Locke in Bel Air, sleeping in the same bed, and attending industry events together, he was also seeing Jocelyn Reeves on the side. The affair was secret, or at least Eastwood tried to keep it that way. He visited Reeves when he could get away, and he made sure that the press did not catch wind of what was happening. On March 21, 1986, Reeves gave birth to a son in Monterey County. She named the baby Scott Clinton Reeves. Eastwood was the father, but his name did not appear anywhere on the birth certificate. On March 2, 1988, just 2 years later, Reeves gave birth to their second child, a daughter named Catherine Ann Reeves. Again, Eastwood's name was absent from the paperwork. On both official birth certificates filed with the state of California, the line reserved for the father's identity reportedly read, "Father declined." The Hidden family remained entirely anonymous for several years. Scott and Catherine grew up knowing who their father was, but they were not allowed to talk about it. Eastwood visited when he could, which was not often. He sent money, presumably enough to keep them comfortable, but he was not present in the way that most fathers are. The children lived under their mother's surname in Hawaii, far from the Hollywood spotlight that followed their father everywhere. The secret finally came out in 1990 when Star magazine ran an investigative expose revealing that Eastwood had fathered 2 children with a flight attendant, and that those children were living in Hawaii under an assumed name. The story was a bombshell. Eastwood had spent years cultivating an image as a tough, independent guy who did things his own way, but the public had never imagined that his way included hiding children from the world. The magazine printed photographs, quoted anonymous sources, and laid out the timeline of the affair for all to see. Eastwood did not deny the story. He could not. While all of this was happening, Eastwood was still living with Sondra Locke, or at least he was until 1989. In April of that year, while Locke was away directing a film, Eastwood made a move that shocked even his closest advisors. He had the locks changed on their Bel Air home, effectively locking Locke out of the house where she had lived for 13 years. Then he ordered all of her possessions placed into storage, as if she had never lived there at all. Locke returned from her directing job to find that she no longer had a home. The man she had given up children for had thrown her out like yesterday's trash. Locke fought back. She filed a massive palimony lawsuit in 1989, seeking financial compensation for the years she had spent as Eastwood's partner. That lawsuit dragged through the courts for years. In 1995, she filed a federal fraud case alleging that Eastwood had set up a sham directing deal at Warner Brothers specifically to get her to drop her initial lawsuit. The legal battles were ugly, expensive, and very public. Eastwood's carefully controlled image was taking hit after hit. But the Sondra Locke era was not the end of Eastwood's secret children. There was another affair, another co-star, and another child that the public did not know about. The affair with another co-star. In late 1988, during the pre-production casting phase for the action comedy film Pink Cadillac, Eastwood met a British-born theater and film actress named Frances Fisher. She was talented, confident, and not easily intimidated by Eastwood's reputation, which was exactly the kind of woman he had always been drawn to. At the time, Eastwood was still technically living with Sondra Locke, though that relationship was crumbling fast. Fisher was not the cause of the breakup, but she would become the beneficiary of it. Following the absolute destruction of his relationship with Locke in 1989, Eastwood found emotional solace with Fisher, and by 1990, he had moved her into his home. Unlike some of his previous relationships, this one was not hidden from the public. Eastwood and Fisher worked together openly on the set of the 1992 film Unforgiven, a critically acclaimed Western that would go on to win multiple Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Eastwood. Fisher played the role of Strawberry Alice, a memorable part that showcased her acting range. Working together did not seem to hurt their relationship. If anything, it strengthened it because they understood each other's professional pressures in a way that outsiders could not. In 1992, the couple finally began stepping out together on high-profile Hollywood red carpets. The photographers snapped their pictures, the gossip columns wrote about their romance, and the public accepted that Frances Fisher was Eastwood's new primary partner. She was not a secret. She was standing right next to him at the biggest events of the year, and Eastwood seemed proud to have her there. On August 7, 1993, Frances Fisher gave birth to their daughter, a girl they named Francesca Ruth Eastwood. The name was a tribute of sorts to Eastwood's past, as his former partner, Sondra Locke, had reportedly planned to name a child Francesca before the relationship fell apart. Now the name belonged to a new daughter, born to a new woman. The irony was probably not lost on Locke, who had given up her chance at motherhood for a man who would go on to have another child with someone else. Despite living together as a nuclear family unit and raising their daughter jointly, Eastwood flatly refused to legally marry Fisher. This was a pattern that had repeated itself throughout his life. He had no problem living with women, having children with them, and letting them raise those children. But marriage was different. Marriage was a legal contract that gave the other person rights to his money, his property, and his future earnings. After the massive settlement he had paid to Maggie Johnson, Eastwood was not eager to put himself in that position again. Fisher wanted to get married. Eastwood did not, and that disagreement would eventually help tear them apart. The intense pressure of the honeymoon phase wore off, as it always does, and Eastwood's rigid, unyielding emotional detachment began to take a toll on the relationship. Fisher later described him as someone who could not move past the superficial stages of a bond. He was charming in the beginning, attentive and romantic, but once the novelty faded, he pulled back. He stopped sharing his feelings, stopped making time for the relationship, and retreated into the solitary routines that had defined his adult life. Fisher was left to raise their daughter mostly on her own, while Eastwood focused on his career. By early 1995, the media officially confirmed that Fisher and Eastwood had entirely separated. The breakup was not as dramatic as the one with Locke, but it was just as final. Fisher moved out of Eastwood's home, and the two of them settled into a co-parenting arrangement for a young Francesca. Fisher later stated that Eastwood was incapable of the kind of deep emotional intimacy that she needed to feel secure in a relationship. He was a good father to Francesca, she admitted, but he was not a good partner to her. The affair with Frances Fisher produced one child, a daughter who would grow up to become an actress and model in her own right. Francesca Ruth Eastwood has appeared in several films and television shows, and she has spoken occasionally about what it was like growing up as Clint Eastwood's daughter. She does not have the same bitterness that some of his other children have expressed. She seems to have made peace with the complicated legacy of being born to a man who had children with multiple women across multiple decades. But Francesca was not the last child. Eastwood had one more child, the turbulent marriage to Dina Ruiz. In April of 1993, while Eastwood was promoting Unforgiven, he sat down for an interview with Dina Ruiz, a prominent and highly respected television news anchor in Monterey, California. She was professional, prepared, and not the least bit intimidated by the man sitting across from her. Eastwood noticed that immediately. He had spent decades being treated like a legend, and here was a woman who treated him like a regular person. The chemistry between them was immediate and powerful, the kind of spark that both of them recognized even as the cameras were rolling. The interview ended, but the connection did not. Eastwood and Ruiz began a quiet dating relationship that intensified quickly following his split from Frances Fisher. Unlike his previous relationships, which had been conducted mostly in secret, this one was more open. Ruiz was not an actress trying to build a career. She was a journalist with her own reputation to protect, and she was not interested in being hidden away. Eastwood seemed to respect that. On March 31, 1996, Eastwood married Dina Ruiz in a private ceremony, making her the second woman in history to legally hold the title of his wife. Maggie Johnson had been the first more than 40 years earlier. Every other woman in between had been a girlfriend, a partner, or the mother of his children, but never a wife. Ruiz was different. She was the one Eastwood chose to marry, and that choice surprised many people who had followed his romantic history. On December 12, 1996, Dina gave birth to their only child together, a daughter named Morgan Eastwood. The baby arrived less than a year after the wedding, so the timing of the pregnancy suggests that marriage was not an accident. Eastwood was in his 60s when Morgan was born, an age when most men are grandfathers, not new fathers. But he seemed genuinely happy, or at least as happy as a man of his disposition ever appeared to be. He showed up for the birth, he held the baby, and he went back to work. For more than a decade, the marriage seemed stable. Eastwood made movies, Dina raised Morgan and managed the household. They attended events together, posed for photographs, and presented a united front to the public. But in 2012, the stability cracked. Dina signed a deal with the E! Network to star in a reality television series called Mrs. Eastwood and Company, a show that featured her daughters, including Francesca from Eastwood's relationship with Frances Fisher, and Morgan, her daughter with Eastwood. The cameras followed the family around, capturing their daily lives for the amusement of strangers. Eastwood was fundamentally opposed to the entire project. He hated the invasive nature of reality television cameras in his private home. He had spent his entire career controlling his image, deciding what the public saw and what it did not see, and now his wife was inviting cameras into spaces that he considered off-limits. The domestic tension became severe. Eastwood refused to participate in the show, which meant that the cameras had to work around him. That awkwardness made the tension even worse. By late 2012, the couple was documented living in completely separate residences. Eastwood had retreated to his properties in Carmel, the small coastal town where he had once served as mayor, leaving Dina and Morgan in the family home. The separation was not announced to the press, but it was obvious to anyone paying attention. Eastwood was gone, and he was not coming back. Dina Eastwood officially filed for divorce in October of 2013, citing irreconcilable differences after more than 17 years of marriage. The legal process took just over a year to complete. The final judgment was entered in December of 2014, marking the official end of Eastwood's second and final marriage to date. Unlike the divorce from Maggie Johnson, which had dragged through the courts for years and cost Eastwood millions, this one was relatively quiet. Dina walked away with a settlement, but nothing like what Maggie had received. She also walked away with custody of Morgan, though Eastwood remained involved in his daughter's life. The dissolution of this final marriage permanently altered Eastwood's approach to life. He was 84 years old when the divorce was finalized, and he had no interest in starting another relationship. The pattern that had defined his adult life, the overlapping affairs, the secret children, and the hidden families, finally came to an end. Eastwood pivoted away from romantic secrets and focused entirely on consolidating his 8 children into a unified public front. Today, Clint Eastwood is a man with 8 children from 6 different women. He has 2 ex-wives and several former partners who have spoken publicly about the pain he caused them. He has been accused of neglect, manipulation, and emotional cruelty. But he has also been described by his children as a loving father who provided for them financially and showed up when it mattered most. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.